Sometimes your bakes just don't turn out quite right, but that's okay. Hello, my dears. Buttercup here, and I'm looking forward to sharing another delightful recipe with everyone. Today, we will be baking a beautiful cinnamon swirl coffee cake, complete with a classic and delicious crumb topping. Gosh, we better get started. We will begin by making the crumb topping. I will be using my food processor for this step. However, if you don't have access to one, you can make the topping using a pastry blender or a fork. Combine 3 tablespoons of flour, 3 tablespoons of dark brown sugar. Whoa! Everything's okay. 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon and a pinch of salt. For those of you that like to be exact, a pinch typically measures out to be about 1/16 of a teaspoon. Now, isn't that interesting? Now we're going to pulse this mixture together until it is combined. Oh, nice. Next, we will add in 1½ tablespoons of butter, cut into small pieces. Make sure your butter is very cold when adding it in. Pulse just until your mixture forms very coarse pieces. Now that our crumb topping is done, we're going to pop this in the refrigerator while we work on the rest. The next step is to make the cinnamon swirl. Combine 1/4 cup of sugar with 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Well, that was simple, wasn't it? Now for the final part, the cake itself. Combine 1/2 cup or 1 stick of softened butter. Get in there. And 1 cup of sugar. Using a mixer, cream these together until they become light in color and fluffy. Next, add in 2 eggs. And then mix until well combined. Add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1 cup of buttermilk. I recently made some delicious homemade butter, so I am using the leftover buttermilk from that. Be sure to check out my video on making easy homemade butter if you want to make some too. Now let's mix these together until just combined. In a separate bowl, measure out 1 3/4 cups of sifted flour. Add in 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And whisk these all together. Add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients in 2 separate additions, mixing until just incorporated between each one. Now for the fun part, it's time to add everything together. I'm using a 9 by 5 inch loaf pan to bake my cake. Make sure your pan is greased or sprayed well with a non-stick cooking spray. Begin by pouring about 1/3 of your cake batter into the pan and spread it out evenly. I think that's about 1/3. Next, sprinkle about 1/2 of your cinnamon sugar mixture over the entire surface. Oh, that looks so fun! Add another layer of the batter, followed by the rest of the cinnamon sugar mixture. Pour the rest of your batter over that. And finally, finish by adding that delicious crumb topping evenly over the surface of your cake. Now, let me tell you a story about the last time I baked this cake. I ended up making a little too much crumb topping, but instead of holding off on all of it, I decided to put it all on the cake anyways. Well, the topping ended up being too heavy for the cake to handle, and my beautiful crumb topping sank all the way to the bottom of the cake. It was like an upside-down coffee cake. Oh dear! While it was a bit unsightly, it did still end up tasting pretty good, though the texture of the crumb topping had changed drastically, becoming almost caramel-like. It is a reminder that baking mishaps can and will happen often, even to more experienced bakers. But you just have to make the best of it. Let's hope this one turns out just fine. We will bake our cake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 55 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the center of the cake comes out clean. Oh my, our coffee cake is out of the oven and, well, I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I had a similar problem happen to this one too. How very strange. This time I was watching it diligently while it was baking and noticed the batter coming up over the crumb topping. Oh no! I attempted to salvage the cake by quickly scooping off some of the batter that rose up over the top of the crumbs, and then sprinkled a bit of additional cinnamon sugar over top. This time, it does look like at least some of the crumb topping is still there, but let's see what it looks like when we cut into it. Well, I say, this has got to be one of my most embarrassing moments. I've made this cake so many times before, and I've just never had this happen before. We've got to get to the bottom of this. Let's see if I can get a piece out. Well, let's see here. Yep, I see that crumb topping down at the bottom. Huh, how strange is that? It's like it just went all the way down. There's still a little bit left on top on these. The bake of the cake itself looks lovely, but very moist. No, that won't work. Let's have my husband taste test it.
Still quite tasty.
The verdict is in. It still tastes good. Maybe we've created an upside-down coffee cake. Well, here's our completed coffee cake. It does look like my attempts to save it worked at least a little bit. Some of the topping definitely went to the bottom, especially on the end pieces, but there are a few middle pieces that maintained that delicious crumb topping. I have to say, I'm really not sure what happened. It is a bake that I have made many times without issues. I even made sure to use the right amount of crumb topping this time. Here is what I would recommend for anyone trying to make this recipe at home. Wait to add the crumb topping until about halfway through the baking process. About 30 minutes in, quickly remove the cake, add the topping, and put it back in right away to finish the bake. I do believe this will ensure your topping does not sink like mine. Regardless of what happened with the topping, the cake itself is really delicious and moist, and that cinnamon swirl, delightful. I would still happily serve this cake to anybody, even if it is a little unsightly.
Hello dears, I wanted to add in a quick note. After filming this, I did some additional research into what could have gone wrong. I believe that the problem was not with the crumb topping being too heavy, but that the cake batter itself was slightly thinner than normal, meaning that it rose too fast and just wasn't able to hold up the crumb mixture on top. My suspected culprit? Why, none other than my homemade buttermilk. Well, gosh darn. In the past, I have used a buttermilk substitute consisting of regular milk mixed with lemon juice, which thickens slightly more than the buttermilk I used here. I still believe that my recommendation of putting the crumb topping on halfway through the baking process should fix the problem. You could also thicken up the cake batter slightly by adding just a little more flour if you feel it is too thin.
If you do end up giving this recipe a try, please let me know how it came out. I would love to hear your story. And be sure to share all of your bakes with me on social media using the hashtag #BakeMeUpButtercup. And if you are craving something actually coffee flavored after all this coffee discussion, you might want to check out my previous video where I teach you how to make incredible mocha cupcakes. Delicious! I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Until next time,